Good morning, good afternoon, good night. I'm Blackbright, and today this video is about the Playboys' role in statelessness. First, let me tell you what statelessness is, just in case you don't know. Well, first, there's about 10 million stateless children around the world. There's 600,000 in Europe. And statelessness is where a child or a person is not a national of any country. And this can happen where people overstay and don't register their children. Now, before 2006, we were living at a time where women used to have children, and a lot of them, going back to the 60s and 70s, they would have children and they would be able to get council houses if they weren't with the father. If they pleaded homelessness and all this kind of stuff, the father wasn't around to support them, they would be able to get a council home. So a lot of times the father was shoved aside and the woman would take over, the woman would register the child, and it would all be hunky-dory for the woman, not for the man. The man was lucky, he'd be able to see the child, but it was always on the woman's terms. Now, at some point, that changed. The British nationality law changed it, and it's had a series of amendments. So now, the biggest one was the British Nationality Act in 1981, which meant that somebody born in the country wasn't automatically a citizen. They had to apply to become a citizen. Now, with subsequent to that now, men are the only ones who can naturalise their children, not women anymore. Men have to be the ones, whether they're single or married, they're the ones who are responsible for naturalising the children. So suppose that a woman has had a child, this is post 2006 by the way, and one of them cannot be a citizen, of course, because if you're both citizens, you're free and dry, you're up and away. You just register for, you just go and apply for a passport. You don't need to register a child. But I'm dealing with people who date or marry people who are not born in the country. It's a responsibility of the man. Now, I was wondering if the government was playing on the fact, especially with black people. I'm not saying all black people mess around and play around and stuff like that, but you do find that black men, especially black British men, they wait a long time. You know, not all of them, of course. There's lots who get married young, but there's a section of them who don't get married until very late in their years. And this can affect children, especially if they have children after 2006. So what they've done now is that a man who is with a woman, say, she's not born in the country, for say about 18 years, and they've had a child within that relationship who's about 10. That child is not automatically British until it is registered. And I don't know if people know that. I think when women go and have babies, especially we've still got a lot of single mothers, when they go and have babies in the hospital gives them the passport, which I'm sure they deem that as being proof that the child is born in the country. But I don't think they tell them that you now have to have this child registered and you have to go with the father. As a result, there are unregistered children who are stateless. Now, suppose you're dealing with a man who's married or who's got more than one woman, and you say to him, look, I need you to register the child. Is he going to want to? Because if he's got a wife, he might not want to register that child as his child. And that's another reason why I call this title, How Playboys Contribute to Stateless Children. Because if he doesn't want to be associated with that child legally, in writing, in documentation, that child is stateless, and that child won't have any protection. No access to public assistance, no access to healthcare, no access to education. If he's deported or if he's imprisoned, he cannot get support. You're damaging the child's life. And you know how many stateless children there are. Like I said, 10 million around the world, 600,000 in Europe. I don't believe that a lot of parents are doing it willingly or knowingly in the UK. It's not like they put something up on the news that say, look, as of 2006, if you have a baby, the father has to go with you to register it. I think there's pros and cons to this, because I think if the woman knows she has to rely on the father to register the child, they're more likely to try to keep that relationship going, as opposed to just using the man as a bloody stud to have a child when they reach a certain age in life. But, you know, men also, you know, they mustn't they have to accept a responsibility to their child. Because supposing they've broken up with the woman, or supposing they want to be spiteful, they might say, oh, I'm not going to go with you to register that child. But it is important that men register their child. Children born after 2006. If you know of anybody who's got a child after 2006 who may not know, through no thought of their own, you know, you can't say people are ignorant. You can't, because you don't know what you're looking for. You know, I mean, I know I'm talking to you about this, but I'm not talking to you. I'm not giving you professional advice. I'm information sharing. But a lot of people, they don't know that the law has suddenly switched and women can't register their child. Some women don't even know that they have to register their children. They believe that just because it's born in the country, it's fine. So they don't know that their children are stateless, and that's why they can be deported. Because if you have a child for someone who's not registered or who's not settled, and that child is stateless, they can boot them out of the country. I don't know where they're going to boot them to, but they could technically boot them out of the country. I think they boot them out to the nationality of the mother, not the nationality of the father. If the father is British, any children that that child has, any children that that man has, are deemed to be British citizens, but he has to register them. That is the important thing. So, you know, it's quite disturbing because, like I said, I'm sure a lot of people wouldn't deliberately make their children stateless. But for there to be 600,000, there's a lot of people who are not aware that they have to register their children if they were born after 2006. I just want to make sure that I haven't missed anything. Well, another thing, you know, like a lot of Caribbeans and Africans, when we have children in this country, they want to send them off to the Caribbean or Africa in order to be educated because they believe the schools are better in different ways, whether it's discipline, whether it's, you know, the way children behave in those schools. But if you do that, if you send your child out of the country, a child is born here, you've registered him and he's naturalised and everything, you've done all that bit, but then you've sent out that child for more than 6 months out of the country to go to school. That child is going to lose its citizenship. It can't just come back after 2 years and say, oh, you know, I was born in the UK, therefore, you know, I should be able to come back. It doesn't work like that anymore. That child would now have to apply for an indefinite leave to remain. And we all know how long those things take. So I can understand, you know, the UK, it doesn't want to be taken advantage of. It doesn't want people just to have children over here just to get a UK status and then exploit that by using the country to have the child, and then you go and educate it somewhere else. Whatever's wrong with England, you have to just take everything with it. And, you know, you have to take the good with the bad. I think that was all Also, I think I did say with regard to a woman, if she's been messing around as well, and she's had two, she doesn't know who the father is. She's in problems, because any woman who wants to naturalise her children anyway has to have a DNA test to make sure that the father is British. So you can't just go with any man and say, okay, this is the father. That you're going to undergo a DNA test, married or not married. The only thing is, if you're married, they're going to assume that it's the husband's. But yeah, nothing is just, they're not taking anything for granted. There's a lot of red tape involved. Let me make sure. Yeah, I've said unmarried women with children of a British citizen rely on the father to register. Yeah, I think I've done all that now. Yeah, so I hope you found this interesting. Like I said, you know, we take a lot for granted unless we're in a situation, and we usually don't know about these things until things go wrong and until there's a need. I'd imagine that most people wouldn't know about registering their child until they were ready to travel. They might want to go on holiday, and then all of a sudden the Home Office will say, well, look, you know, we haven't got your child registered as a citizen. You know, after 2006, supposing that happens, and supposing you're not even with the father, or you don't even know where the father is, what were you going to do? So you need to be on the ball, peeps. It's not easy being on the ball, but you need to be on the ball. And that's all for now. Bye-bye.